สวัสดีครับยินดีต้อนรับทุกท่านเข้าสู่สัมมนาออนไลน์ ISPF Grants for International Research Collaborations จัดโดย British Council ประเทศไทยนะครับผมแป๊ก ชยนำรุมนีจะเป็นผู้ดำเนินรายการในวันนี้นะครับโดยเราจะดำเนินรายการเป็นภาษาอังกฤษตลอดรายการนะครับ Good afternoon and good morning wherever you are in Thailand or the UK. Welcome to our online seminar ISPF Grants for International Research Collaborations held by the British Council Thailand. This session aims to provide you more information about our research collaboration program, which is delivered by the British Council. The session will include an overview of the International Science Partnerships Fund, or ISPF, and followed by our program and further details for application. We will finish today's session with Q&A. As you are listening along, please feel free to type your questions in our chat box and we will get back later. My name is Chenan Bunmi or Pak. Happy to be your host for an hour where we will be deliver the session in English. The session will be recorded and it will be shared later to you after the session ends. Before we start, I would like to say a big thank you to our special speakers from the British Embassy Bangkok and my colleague joining from the UK as well. So without any further ado, let's get started with an overview of the International Science Partnership Fund. In this session, it is our pleasure to welcome Khun Chawit Uttamachai or Khun Bank Science and Innovation Advisor from the British Embassy Bangkok to provide us more information. These funding opportunities from the UK. Good afternoon, Khun Bank.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chawit Uttamachai, or you can of course call me Bank. My role is the Science and Innovation Advisor here at the British Embassy in Bangkok, and I look after supporting collaboration in science between the UK and Thailand science sector. So I'll be talking through in general about what the International Science Partnership Fund is, followed by more details about what are the available programs. But of course, some of this will be delivered through the British Council team as well. So it's very nice to see you again, everyone. And of course, thank you very much to British Council for having me. And I will try and share my screen with just a moment. Right now, so what is the International Science Partnership Fund? Before we go into all of that, I also want to introduce to you what the UK ambition is all about science and innovation. So earlier, just last year, the UK government has published its national strategy on science and technology framework, in which the UK, what we wanted to achieve out of it is that we wanted to be a global leader that uses science in order to tackle all the global challenges, to support economic development and social welfare, and also as well as sustainable development goals, the SDGs. So, and with part of all of these development challenges, the UK is also prioritizing key technology areas as well. So just last March, we published another publication called the International Tech Strategy, where the UK is trying to prioritize 5 key technologies. So that are namely the AI, quantum technology, semiconductors, engineering, biology, and future telecommunications. But we are not just trying to emphasize on the development of the technology itself, but also trying to ensure that we have the right standards and regulation in order to promote a secure use. But with all of these developments and ambition, the UK recognizes that it is very much important that we are not doing science and research alone. It is all about international networks as well, and we do highly prioritize how we're working with international partners, including Thailand, to ensure that we are tackling not just the issue in small scale, but how do we tackle like Thailand issues as well as the global issues at the same time. And with that, what the UK has made its commitment is, first of all, the offers called the new International Science Partnership Fund, or ISPF for short, which is funded by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, and it previously have been used to the Newton Fund and Global Challenge Fund in the past. This is the new fund that is replacing the Newton Fund and the TCRF, and that's funded by the Department of Science. But of course, there are several other science offers that Thai academics and Thai researchers could also have a look into as well, which I'll also touch briefly by the end of this slide. Now, what is International Science Partnership Fund? International Scientific Funds, or ISPF for short, is a funding that is designed to enable the UK researchers, academias, and innovators to collaborate with international partners all around the world, and that includes Thailand. And our objective is trying to ensure that we are doing that collaboratively in an agile way, but we're also contributing to global challenges at the same time. And we do emphasize the importance of building such strong network to tackle challenges together. So how the fund is managed is that the UK Department of Science itself do not directly give out grants by themselves, but they do allocate funds to different organizations in the UK. All of these organizations that manages the funding on behalf of the Department of Science, as I've listed below, these organizations are called the UK Delivery Partners, and all of them have slightly different ways of managing the grants with different objectives, different fundings, as well as different timelines. So British Council, as you hear today, is one of the delivery partners, but then there are also organizations, for instance, UK Research and Innovation, or UKRI, that funds more on fundamental discovery research side of things. There's also the British Academy that focuses on supporting social sciences, Royal Academy supporting on engineering solutions, and Academy of Medical Sciences supports mainly on medical research. And as you can see, that different delivery partners have different priorities, and therefore would result in different types of funding programs that they design afterwards. Regardless of their different interests, though, all of the programs that are designed by all the delivery partners have to comply to the ISPF thematic area on your right-hand side, as you see on the screen. And these thematic areas, as you can see, are very broad. So first is healthy people, animal, and plants. And that encompasses everything on health security, pandemic preparedness, vaccine development, to social science aspect of health. Resilient planet theme on the bottom left is more focused, as you probably could have guessed, is more on climate change. And that covers typically from net zero carbon emissions, looking at mitigation and adaptation, to biodiversity conservation. So the range is quite broad within the term itself. Transformative technology in purple is very much what I've mentioned previously. It's looking at the 5 key technologies, but also trying to ensure how we develop the right standards and regulations around it. And finally, developing tomorrow talent is pretty much a cross-cutting themes. It's not like discipline-based, but it's trying to ensure how we are building the right workforce to tackle the future challenges that requires research. So that would include supporting for fellowship, supporting for trainings of different skills, for instance, and building the networks as well. So there are actually like many active calls that have already been announced, and the funding itself have been formally announced since last November. So you'll start to hear more and more announcement of new International Science Partnership Fund programs. But this is just the 4 programs that are currently active as of today. So what are they? I'll just go through briefly with you on just to give you some flavor of what all of these call encompass. But of course, I've provided a link, which I'm sure the British Council colleagues will be sharing with you afterwards, so that you could find out more in more details. So the first call, Sustainable Aquaculture System. This is a call that supports fundamental research into like developing systems to promote sustainable aquaculture, and it could range from anywhere from shrimp farming, fish farming, depending on the local context. The funding itself is around £2.5 to £3 million per project, which will require at least 1 PI from the UK and 1 PI from another countries in Southeast Asia. It could be Thailand, it could be other countries, but at least 1. Now, the call stage of application is that it requires a 2-stage of application where you have to submit your expression of interest early by next week. But the full proposal itself you can submit them later in May. Next call, which have just been recently announced just a week or 2 ago, is the British Academy ODA Challenge-Oriented Grant. So as I've mentioned, British Academy is more focused on social science side of things. This particular call is worth £200,000 for a project that has policy elements to it. So ideally, you will need to have 1 social science policy researchers as one of the PI in the project. And the British Academy have already allocated 8 particular areas So that this will look at, for instance, women and climate, for instance, looking at climate change and building resilience. There's also one on supporting pandemic preparedness, one looking at antimicrobial resistance, for instance. But all of these, as I've mentioned, the call is more focused on the policy research side. It's just been open for just a few weeks ago and closes just before Songkran, so the 10th of April. This one is only a one-stage application process. So if you're interested on policy side of things, to have a check on this particular call. The next call, International Fellowship, that is managed by both the British Academy, OBA, and Royal Society. So this one is essentially, in simple terms, giving grants for academics in eligible countries, including Thailand, to go and undertake research in the UK for up to 2 years. Is of course have been open for a few weeks already. It is closing just later next month. So if you have some ideas wanting to do research in the UK, now is your time. And another call that is also opening in the same period is the British Council International Research Collaboration that we're here today to give more details. As I've mentioned, different organizations, different delivery partners have a slightly variation in terms of what they are expecting from each call and from the application process. And you're here in this rightful moment to understand what the British Council is looking for. And I highly recommend you to stay until the end to understand what British Council is looking for so that it also increases your success rate. There are several calls that will also be open in just a few weeks and months down the line. So first is on One Health and Pandemic Preparedness managed by the Medical Research Council. I think they're actually opening in by the end of this week or early next week. So if you're working on pandemic preparedness, do keep an eye out. But bear in mind, as you've seen in the name of the program, it's UK Southeast Asia. Thereby, you will need at least one UK and 2 Southeast Asian partnering countries. So it's not just UK and Thailand, but it has to be one other countries. British Council will also open another call on fellowship programs as well. And we will be finding out more information later in April. Several other programs, for instance, include the Leadership in Leaders in Innovation Fellowship Advanced Program. This is more on training on research commercialization. So if you are an innovator with TRL 7 or above, this is the program for you. We also will be funding writing proposal workshop, writing publications workshop, international writing workshops program later this year, as well as global professorship awards, career development awards for professor level within the field of social science. And as you can see, I under ISPF do fund a lot of different stages of career and different thematic areas. So I'm sure all of this, there are so many calls that you can explore, but if you want to find out more information, what I would recommend you to do is to subscribe to the International Science Partnership Fund newsletter. So do send an email to the ISPF inquiries email, and they will be sending a monthly update on what are the calls. But alternatively, what you could also do is to look into these 3 websites and with the QR code. So these are the government update websites that update funding opportunities regularly. But do bear in mind that this is developed based from the UK perspective. So if you're coming to find information from Thai researchers' perspective, you need to filter them down for those calls that are eligible for Thai researchers. Now, those are the calls under ISPF are those that have been funded by the UK Department for Science and Innovation and Technology. And that's just one big part of funding that supports UK and Thailand research partnerships. There are several other departments that also offers research funding as well. For instance, the Department of Health has a funding agency called the National Institute of Health and Care Research, and they fund typically more the applied health research. If you have more ideas on very much health research down the line, this is the funding agency that you can look out for. But alternatively, there are other funding agencies. Different departments fund different things. For instance, we've also have been opening calls for product development for health research. We've also just recently announced a new call to support biodiversity on the right-hand side as well. And if you want more details, and of course, I'll be providing this in the slide pack, so you can of course have a look once the British Council has shared with you. But with that, that's all from me for now. I'm sure there are so many opportunities that you could look into finding out how you can work with the UK. But for now, I'll hand over back to you from the British Council team to give you more details on how to apply for the British Council opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khun Bang, for providing your insight about ISPF fund from the UK and also other, extended opportunities from other department as well. Please be reminded again that we will have a separate session for Q&A. But at this meantime, if you have any question just now, please feel free to type in the chat box. Coming up next, I would like to jump into our program. As you know, we are looking forward to hearing more about today. Before we start, I would like to guide you through our work at the British Council. All right, so as you may know, the British Council is intercultural organization where we focus on people-to-people relations, where our work stand on three sides of things. So the first is English, education, and arts. So we work basically through these three pillars, not including with, some may familiar with IELTS examinations, but we also offer like English teaching center as well. Our focus today is basically rely on education pillar, where we want to focus higher education and research institution partnerships with between the UK and Thailand, and also we also work with UK artists and Thailand under our art and creative industry pillar. All the above reflects the critical role of people-to-people relations in assuring long-term, mutually beneficial connections, alignment on universal values, and partnership in international forum. So now, as we mentioned about the ISPF, and as the British Council is also one of the delivery partner under this fund. So at the British Council, we have two main programs delivered under this fund. So the first one is research collaborations, and the second one, as you may have heard from Kun Bang as well, so it's the program under Early Career Fellowships. So the first one, so which is the highlight for today as well, and that's the reason that you are looking forward to hearing from us more. So it's about research collaboration, where we looking it's like a small seed funding for collaborations between the UK and Thai. In terms of duration of the grant, we expect in between 18 to 24 months. Each grant will be up to 100K full economic cost. For the teams, we actually refer to our ISPF thematic themes area that Kun Bang just already mentioned earlier. So it can be any theme that follow under these four pillars, and that we don't have any specific priority areas under, for Thailand. In terms of the timeline, you can look at the right-hand side that I show right here as well. So we just opened the call since like the beginning of January, and actually this is the right time that we also having this webinar to let you know about the information, and hopefully it will just reach to wider audiences as well. And our deadline will be closed in the month. So basically it's going to be by March. In terms of submission, it's going to be online submission through our provided online platform. And we expect the project will be start in this August this year. So you can also scan this QR code to have more information as well, or otherwise those information will be provided under this webinar as well. But other than that, that is something that you can refer to after this webinar as well. So for the second program, which we will have more information by this April, is the Early Career Fellowships program, where we just want to offer a fellowship for postdoc researchers. So to do a fellowships at the UK in between 6 to 12 months. So each fellows we have will receive up to like 60,000 GBP to do their fellowships in the UK under this 4 theme as well. Unfortunately, that we don't have further details in terms of the institutions or the subject areas that will be covered as well, but we looking forward to receiving more information by April, and that you can keep an eye or keep in touch with us once the call is launched, and then by April, so you will receive more information about it. So next, we will focus and dig down more about our research collaboration program. And I would like to hand this section to our colleague from the UK. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, just hand it to you whenever you are
Oh,
ready.
okay. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bank, for your very useful presentation from the embassy about the ISPF and the other programs that are running from the UK in collaboration with Thailand. So my name is Kathy Stromer, and I am the program manager, one of the program managers for ISPF. And I'm working particularly on the research collaboration program. I previously worked on the Newton Fund for the British Council, including institutional links and the Newton Fund Impact Scheme. And I am based in the Wales office in the UK. So I'd also like to give you a Welsh greeting. Croeso cynnes iawn I chi gyd yn ddod yma. Thank you for coming, and a very warm welcome to all. As you can see, what we're going to do is we're going to have a brief overview, as PAC has already done in the British Council and ISPF. We'll go through he's gone through the funding opportunity, apologies. We'll review the guidance for applicants. This is my bit, the budget, and the questions, as well as submission process. So if we'll go ahead to the next slide. Okay. For the UK applicants, we expect most project leaders will be based at a university, but there are other non-profit research organizations which can apply for funding. For example, national museums, the Centre for Fisheries and Aquaculture, the John Innes Centre, and the National Botanic Gardens. And there is a full list of the eligible UK applicants, aside from universities, on our website, which you can check. And if you are thinking of working with an institution that's not listed, you could ask them to send us an email and we'll check their eligibility for inclusion. For Thai applicants, it's probably best to consider which organizations are not eligible to act for funding or as project leads. So that is ones affiliated to education institutions in the UK or any other country. Those ones are not eligible for funding. For example, if the University of Newcastle has a satellite campus in Thailand, they are not eligible to apply for funding in this call. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So the project leaders must be leading or established researchers. And as PAC has shown, we have the link to the Euraxis website, which describes exactly what those are expected to be and the competencies that you would have under those categories. As a broad thing, this means they have to have experience in project management and be senior members of staff at their institution. In the UK, they might be professors or senior lecturers. They have established a level of independent research, and they have established a reputation for research excellence. They've also committed to the professional development of people in their team. For both the UK and Thai researcher, we'll look for evidence of this in their narrative CV. And the narrative CV is something that's been recently introduced to the UK. Your partners in the UK should be aware of it. And there's information on the UKRI website. And that is the one that we think most UK researchers will be using. So I would encourage you to follow that template. We will only accept one application from project leaders, so they cannot act as project leaders on 2 projects. And just a couple of notes. For-profit organizations would normally be expected to be associate partners, ones which contribute expertise, but as the funding is part of the UK ODA budget, we would not expect to pay their costs from the UK budget, except for travel and subsistence. The other note is that this program has been set up for collaboration between the UK and Thailand. So funding of partners from other countries or territories would be outside of the scope of this program. And that means that if you had an associate partner from a third country, such as the USA or Canada or Australia, we would not be able to fund any of their costs in the program. We're looking for this to be a UK-Thailand program. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so the UK budget is set at a maximum of 100,000 full economic cost, and that is the actual cost of the proposal. And out of this, the ISPF fund will cover 80% of the costs, with the rest being covered by other funding that UK institutions receive for research. This means that the grant for the program is capped at 80,000. In Thailand, we currently don't have a partner, so the funds for the partner will be paid through the UK side, and they'll be included on the UK side of the budget in the application form, and in the detailed budget sheet which is submitted. They will be paid at 80% of the full economic cost, since the funding is going to the UK institution, who will then disperse money to their partner. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just the list of eligible and ineligible costs. It's not exhaustive. There is more information in the guidance, but two main ineligible categories to consider are that we won't be able to fund individual pieces of equipment over £10,000 under this programme. The other thing to note is that standard office equipment, for example, laptops, are not eligible for funding. These are part of the institutional overheads. But if there is a specific reason why your project needs a non-standard laptop, and that could be covered, for example, if you need to run specific programs or you have specific features for the research project that you would try to make a case for it. Just another note, on direct costs. These are the ones which are specifically incurred as a result of the project. For example, you could look up the price of a hotel or a flight and see how much it costs. And the technicians, they would have an hourly rate that you could assign to them with a fixed number of time on the project. And you would know how much your individual consumables cost. So those are the sort of things which would be direct costs. The indirect costs are ones which cover the costs of the research organization's management and administrative services. So go ahead, we're going to go on to the budget sheet itself now. Right, and I've put in a QR code, which I hope will take you to the download for the budget sheet, because it may be easier for you to look at that directly while we discuss it. Now, each project will submit a budget sheet. As you can see, we use this document for all the research collaboration grants, and we identify the projects by the UK project leader name and the partner country. So it'll be important that these are included. The form will calculate the amount of funding for the UK once the information's been put in, and then that will include the information for Thailand as well, as they will be funded in the UK. So on the sheet here, the UK ISPF contribution will also include the Thai contribution, and you will add any Thai information into the part for the individual pages for UK partners amounts. And each line of the budget, you'll see that there's the links to other parts of the form that you'll complete, and then it'll pull through to this main page. So you'll work with your partner and then together complete it. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so the slide is done with the budget is done with the UK applicant. They'll work with you and complete their part and give them information for your part, and that will all be included on the UK side. There's no restriction, there's no ceiling on how much should be allocated to each section. For example, if the Thai partner wants to spend more funding on technicians and research assistants and not include funding in another area, that's possible. Similarly, if the UK institution agrees to waive certain costs, for example, indirect costs for estates, they could spend the funds in another section. One area which is particularly important for us at the British Council is inclusion. And this is to make sure that people from diverse backgrounds or those with additional needs are able to obtain research funding without having to use the funding which is allocated for the research project. So it's a type of top-up funding, which would be outside of the 80% rule. We'll be looking at these on a case-by-case basis, but it might cover the cost of translation into a local language to encourage participation of underrepresented groups. Potentially, if a researcher is based from and traveling from a remote area, this might also be considered under this section. The very most important thing is that you make contact with us in advance before applying for this fund. We will then consider if it's eligible, and we will then decide whether it's allowed, and then you would include it only after you've talked to us. We also anticipate being able to offer top-up funding if during the project you find you need additional funds in order to include people whose participation you hadn't originally planned. Again, this is a new thing, and so it will be done on a case-by-case basis. But you can imagine if you have hired someone and they have a physical need, they need to travel, and that incurs extra cost. And that for that, then you would contact us and apply, so we could consider whether we'd be able to allow that. If you go to the actual application form on the next slide, just a few notes before we go in depth that the application form doesn't allow the inclusion of pictures or charts. This is just the way it's set up as the program. So you'll need to be able to describe each section. You can put hyperlinks to references, but you must not add links which will lead to more information that you were unable to include in the application form. Our reviewers will only look at what is written in the application and the supporting documents required, and they will be specifically told to ignore any attempt to provide data which is not required. I also want to note that I recognize the temptation to use AI to complete the application and answer questions, and I accept that AI might be useful as a starting point to frame your answers, but you are required to acknowledge any use of AI as part of the application, and failure to do so will result in the project being ineligible. So, for the abstract, there should be in clear, non-scientific language about what the project is and what it hopes to achieve. The next section that you'll see in the application is about the research project, and the questions around this will draw out what the specific objectives of the project are, what are the deliverables. You'll include the details of the research proposal, the stakeholders, and the timetable. As part of the project, you'll also submit a Gantt chart that sending us to us. That's to show you understand where the project can start and when it will end, rather than the progress by weeks, which is what is in here. We would like to see the research as well placed in the context, and for you to demonstrate that you understand what other research is being done in the field. The collaboration section is simply to show that you have a clear plan as to who will do what, why you're working with that group, and what benefit it will bring. And similarly, sustainability. These grants are seed funding, so you should lead to more opportunities for the participants. Capacity strengthening should also be an important part of the project, demonstrating that the skills are being shared between the project partners to develop the other members of the team. So how will the project support ECRs, technicians, etc. in the partner? And if you go to the next slide, yes. So then we have a section about research and governments and ethics. And we want to understand in the UK if you've got ethics approval, and in Thailand if ethics approval is required, and that you've considered the governance of the project. What are the health and safety and ethical issues, and how will they be addressed? If the project involves animals, human participation, or the use of human tissues, we will ask you to provide the appropriate certificates as part of the grant award process. But we also want to think about, who's going to be on the project board when you start to think about the governance. And we do look for ethical partnerships, ones where both the UK and the international partner are equally involved in the governance of the project, and there's joint decision making. And that should come out not just in this section, but throughout the entire application. Now, trusted research is an important topic for the UK, and I believe it'll be an important topic for Thailand as well. The point is to ensure that a relationship has been established between the UK and the Thai project leaders, that they've discussed their work before starting the collaboration. It's also about making sure that the processes for sharing research are secure, so the partners are only sharing research relevant to the project and not giving access to third parties or research which is not related to the work being done. An environmental impact statement is because we know we're living in a climate emergency, and I'm sure you felt that in Thailand, and we want to see that the researchers in the program are seeking ways to mitigate against damage to the environment that might happen as a result of their project. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, safeguarding. This is recognizing the risks of travel for you coming to the UK or for partners coming to Thailand. But it's also about making sure that people are in place in case things go wrong. And this might be part of your ethics approval. For example, if you're working with particular vulnerable populations or indigenous communities. But it's also important to recognize that you may not realize that people on your project team are vulnerable. And so you have to have these in place just in case anything happens. And it's to protect both you and the people who you're working with. Intellectual property. Now, we found this is an area where in the past, research reviewers have commented that they haven't felt the applicants understood what IP their projects would be creating. So I would encourage you to talk to people in your university. In the UK, this would be the tech transfer team or the research and innovation team to help you consider how you answer this section. If you go to the next one. So there is a two-step submission process for your application. The first is to answer the questions on the application form, and that's done through our portal. Once you've submitted, the UK project leader should send a PDF, receive a PDF of the application form. And this will include a unique reference number, and they will use that when they're communicating with the British Council. Now, sometimes the institution firewall blocks this email, so they can contact us early and let us know if they don't receive it. So we encourage everybody to submit early. And if you don't receive an email in the UK of the application form as a PDF, we will be able to download it for you. If you go to the next slide about our supporting documents. Yes. You must submit them all before the deadline, which is the 12th of March at noon UK time. Previously, these would have been submitted via the online portal, but we are now requiring them to be sent via email to our inbox. And because of this, we're introducing very specific requirements on how to submit the documents to ensure that the right files are matched to the right applications. Applicants will need to ensure they've submitted the documents at once, as we'll be unable to accept multiple emails. So all the documents should only be sent in one email. They shouldn't be sending multiple emails. So before sending, they'll be expected to make sure the documents are correct and that they have used the naming conventions shown. And so as well as reducing the risk of incorrect files being attached to the application, this should also help you ensure you send all the correct documents. And I think usually the UK applicant would copy the Thai applicant in when they send these. The next slide, please. Just to note, there's two areas I've not mentioned for the application questions, and they are critical to your application: ODA and gender. For both of these, failure to provide a sufficiently detailed answer will result in your project not being eligible. And there are particular rules around ODA or official development assistance that you should be aware of when you're planning your proposal. So go on to the next one, please. So for official development assistance. Now, I want to be clear that a lot of times people will ask, is my project eligible under the ISPF themes? And one of the most important things is not just that it's eligible under ISPF themes, because ISPF themes are meant to be very broad, but does your project count for ODA assistance? And so you have to demonstrate that you have a route to impact within a medium-term time frame for your research to receive funding. And failure to do this will result in it being rejected. And this is the key question. So please make attention to this. We know that your research will be at a relatively early stage, but understanding the potential impact is crucial to show you understand the local situation and the challenges and have considered how to address them, as well as you show what's currently being done. So it brings together the other parts of the application, the work with the stakeholders and the timeline to present a picture of how your project will make a positive change to the economic and social welfare of the populations in Thailand. And it should be noted that there are areas we would not expect to fund a project, not just because it shows an inadequate route to impact in Thailand, but also because it's addressing an issue that is not specific to Thailand. For example, if you're looking at something like breast cancer, you would need to be able to demonstrate that there's a specific reason why this is affecting Thailand in a different way to non-ODA countries. And while we know that the computer and the AI section is part of the ISPF themes, You should note that ODA funding cannot be used for military, security, or dual-use projects. So you have to be very careful when you're framing what you're going to do. We'll next go to the next slide and just go over the UK requirement for gender inclusion. So one other one. All right, that's it. Great. So this is in UK law that we can't spend ODA money unless it provides an adequate way to demonstrate that it is going to contribute to reducing inequality between persons of different gender. And so we have to ensure that all projects funded through official development assistance are compliant with this act. And then just a quick reminder about the Sustainable Development Goals, which you'll have seen on the next slide. Go ahead. That's just to say that they will not be achieved without gender equality being taken into consideration, because we're talking about populations and these are worldwide goals. And although gender equality is only one of these goals, it actually impacts on all of them because we're looking at society as a whole. So we're going to go on to a few examples about how gender can be included in projects. For example, if you're thinking about urban planning, it's recognizing the differences in how people of different genders complete their everyday. Women usually act as carers, so their journeys to and from a place of work may not be the same as a man. As carers, they may have responsibility for dropping off children at school, or they may be running different errands on the way to or from an appointment. If they have small children, their access may be different if they're using a stroller or pushchair or having to carry a child. And again, on the next slide, we talk about AI. We know that facial recognition software has had problems not only recognizing people of different gender, but distinguishing between people with different facial features, for example, people of African heritage. So it's important to remember that it's not just a question of gender, but looking at the whole person and all their characteristics. A woman in her 20s will have different responsibilities from someone in their 70s. And the ethnicity and the different ways that society considers gender are also important to think about, and how the roles change over the period. Because overall, it's not strictly about gender, it's about society. So if a project is eligible for ODA funding and it is having a societal impact, it will impact society at different levels, including on people of different genders. So if you go to the next slide, please. So we do have these 5 questions that we ask you to submit as part of the, that may be the next one. That's just, I think, repeating. Okay, yeah, sorry. So have measures been put into place? The important thing about these questions is we do expect you to provide an answer to each of them, and failure to provide an answer to them could result in your project being marked as ineligible because of a fail to consider gender. There may be times when you're doing research that, you know, there is limited gender impact, but you're not just looking at the project itself, you're also looking at the project team, the people who you're working with, your stakeholders, as well as the impact. So we expect that in some section somewhere there will be gender considerations, and you have to understand how that is going to affect how you run the project and how you include people of different genders throughout the project. So if you think that something is not related to your project, you have to be able to say, why not? And that is really critical to these questions, is that you say not only the impact, but if you think there's no risks or no unintended consequences, you have to say why you don't think there are and explain that to you. So go ahead to the next slide, please. That's the questions. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, Jolken Vaudian. And I think I'll pass over back to Pak for the Q&A session, but I'm happy to help. I'll still be here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Katie. So that was really impressive and also insightful information indeed. We will now move to Q&A session, and once again, just to reminding you all that if you have any questions, please feel free to type in your chat box, and we will pick it up as time goes by. We will try our best to answer all the questions in the webinar as well. But if not, or if we miss out anything, we will also share the recording later on, and some questions we also included in the slides, so you can refer from there as well. So I think so far, so we received some questions here. So the first question is like, do researchers in Thailand need to be Thai citizens to be eligible for the grant? So Katie, so what's your thoughts on this?
For the Thai partner, they need to be a permanent employee at the university in Thailand. So if that university requires you to be a Thai citizen to be a permanent employee, then that you would need to be a Thai citizen. But there's no requirement specifically in the program for the researcher to be Thai. It is their employment contract which will make the difference.
All right. So the second one, what are the specific research topics that should be pursued? Is social science, human rights, or business discipline covered by the grant as well?
So this, again, the ISPF themes are very broad. So yes, those topics could be covered, but the most important thing is to make sure that the application form demonstrates that it is eligible for official development assistance funding, and that there's a specific need in Thailand, and you can demonstrate how the impact will be in Thailand. And a good way to work on that is to make sure you have local stakeholders outside the research project who are supporting the project.
Okay. So, the next one, do we have to have a host before applications?
So I think that because this is a UK-Thai program, we would expect there to be a project leader from the UK, a UK university or other institution that you would be working with in Thailand. So it's not a fellowship program, so you won't have a host, but you will have an application partner in the UK. And because of the way the project is run, we would expect you to have that before application.
Next one, could you give us like, somebody asked about criteria for selecting successful applications, and also whether or not, if some proposal have more co-investigators or things like that, would that also affect the chance of acceptance as well?
So the criteria are in the guidance for applicants, which is online. The two most important criteria are the ODA eligibility and the gender requirement, because if you fail on those two, it won't matter the quality of the application. The project will be ineligible for funding. So the number of stakeholders and other organizations that you're working with, the number of co-investigators, they don't affect the chance of being funded, but you would want to show that there's actually adding value. If you had a lot of stakeholders that were really useful and you could describe how they're going to be contributing, that would be encouraged. But it's not, if you just put in a bunch of universities to show that you know those people, that's not going to make your chances any better.
And what about the number of co-investigators?
Okay. Yeah, so the number of co-investigators will not affect the chance of acceptance. It's the quality of the co-investigators and their involvement and contribution. Okay, okay.
Yeah. And also, I think this one, I think it can be either Katie or Kun Bang, if you have any thoughts on, what is maybe like the most effective strategies for establishing contact with another partner or PI based in the UK. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, I would say you'll know that most universities in the UK have websites where they list their university staff. So that is one way that you could get in contact with them. But we would also say that if you've read an interesting article from a PI who is working in your subject area, then I would, start with that to make sure that you have some background and that you understand what they're working on, and you can show to them how it would benefit them to work in Thailand. And, it depends on the subject area, but you can find the contact details for most PIs on their website. I don't know, Bank, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
I think it is also making like the active participations in different networking opportunities will also contribute to building and expanding your network. So as you can see from the ISPF itself, we also provide different opportunities to create that initial network, whether it's the networking opportunities to like different kinds of fellowships. I think that's the way that we are trying to encourage people to kind of like explore these new opportunities and start that initiation of like that initial link, and then which could then further lead to like bigger calls as well. Another way simply is to also definitely like explore your own institution networks. You've of course have different Thai universities have of course been involved in the grants from both the Newton Fund and the GCRF as well. And of course, Thai universities definitely have a lot of students going to the UK doing some sorts of research. That kind of like pre-existing partnerships helps a lot with continuing conversations into bigger projects as well. So do make sure you're also exploring what is already happening behind the scene with your institutions.
And the next one is it required that there needs to be, any papers or published research papers after the grant?
We would like to think that these grants are seed funding, and so that following the grant, after the project ends, you would be able to publish your results, or you disseminate them at a conference or other event, or perhaps you would use this funding to apply for further grants and get more funding from other institutions, as the ones Bank has indicated already. So because the grant is for 2 years, it's unlikely that you would be able to publish a paper within the period of the grant, but we would expect you to be able to publish something of your results after. And, we recognize that not all projects you're doing research, you may not find that there is success, but still you would want to let other people know, and so you would publish that. So yes, and we may be in contact with you as well to talk about case studies. So we would probably be in contact with you after the grant ends, but as part of the grant process, it's not required in that sense.
Let me just try to look in the chat. I think there's a couple. I think there's a questions about IP, but I'm not quite sure because the question was not really quite clear. But it says like I think it's about the ownership. So I will just translate into question like, does the ownership of the foreground IP generated from this project depends on the collaborative research agreement between partners, or any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so successful projects, we do have information on our website in the sense that we have our grant contract available for people to look at, and that describes the IP. We really would expect you to own your own IP, but we would retain some rights to be able to use it for case studies, sort of, and pictures and some of the documents. And we would encourage you to publish in open access portals. But yeah, without knowing more specifics, I think it'll be also between the partners, and I would encourage you to look at the contract.
And also, I think just like two more last question. Is the grant available in next year, like 2025? Maybe Khun Bank, maybe you want to take on this?
I'm not confirmed at this stage. I think there are several factors affecting the decisions for next financial year. So I would highly suggest, if there are calls that you intend to apply for this year, do apply them now if you want to apply under the ISPF.
Thank you. Okay. I think another one. Do Thai and UK partners need to have prior collaboration? Katie.
They don't need to have a collaboration, but they should make sure that they're aware of what research the other person is doing under the trusted research section, and be confident that the person they're working with has the capacity to work on the project and the skills that they need to make the collaboration successful. So they're not required to have collaborated before. They should have some knowledge of each other, have talked to each other previously. So
Right. So now I just want to leave some our contacts as shown in the slide. So please do keep in touch with us. The British Council will have various channels as shown on the screen. So it can be either email, Facebook, or X, previously called Twitter, or LinkedIn as well. And also, I also just to recap again or highlight again that on the right hand side that you will see our QR code and also further information of our research collaboration program that we were presenting today, and also as well as providing further information. And I would like to highlight our appreciation to Kun Chawit from the British Embassy Bangkok, and also Katie from the UK as well, for joining the session today. And we hope that you will find this information useful for your further reference. And also we definitely really keen on receiving your applications by by our deadline, which is the 12th of March at 12 noon by the UK time. So please also make sure that it is 12 noon by the UK times, and also please not, if you are referring to the Thai time zone or things like that, please make sure it's 12 noon sharp at the UK time. So we will share the recording and also the handouts of the presentation used today. Good luck everyone, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you very much for joining today. สวัสดีครับ